This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FY Investment Group, your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business, politics that impact you, our viewer. Today, we are fortunate to have Mike Ghouse, a personal friend, a man who inspired all of us to do well, but to do good. Thank you very much, Mike, for coming, and appreciated you taking the time to come and talk to us. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why did you move to Washington, D.C.? Okay, go ahead.
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you brought me out here. Why did I move to Washington, D.C.?
You live in Dallas.
I used to live in Dallas. Now moving to D.C. The purpose was very simple. I have a passion for pluralism. How do we create cohesive societies? And I felt D.C. is a place where we can take it to a larger extent. And that's what brought me here.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, though. Tell the audience who you are.
Well, my name is Mike Ghouse, as he said. I am very committed to the idea of pluralism, in that meaning respecting the otherness of others. And I am born, raised in Bangalore, India. My town is called Yelahanka. My father was a mayor of the town when we were growing up. And he had this similar attitude, inclusive attitude for everyone. And then from there, I grew up, came to the US some 37, 38 years ago. And I always had this passion for pluralism. And Steve Jobs, when he passed away, he said something, pursue your passion. I was doing all this work as a volunteer on a part-time basis. Then I said, no, I got to do this on a full-time basis. And that's what changed me. And I was doing in Dallas. All my friends said, you need to go to DC. And I'm so glad I met you.
Yes.
And you're giving me lift.
Oh, I'm hoping to give you a lift, and we will do whatever we can. Islam always stood for equality, dignity, tolerance, and respect for other faiths. And you just mentioned respect for other faiths. How do we create interfaith dialogue so we can build the bridges of understanding and cooperation?
Well, first of all, interfaith is sometimes misunderstood. It is not missionizing the other person. It is respecting the otherness of others. You are who you are, I am who I am. God has created each one of us to be unique beings. Our own thumbprint, eye print, our DNA is unique, and our taste buds are unique. So each one of us is very unique individual, and that is God's intention. Had God wanted, He could have created all of us precisely alike. He could have made a mold meant to be 6 foot tall, 2-inch nose, 32-inch arm, and punched out 7 billion of us looking exactly alike. Women to be 100 pounds or whatever. But He said, no, I'm going to make you individuals. And then He said, then He understands, being the creator, being a mother understands her children. God understands His creation. He figures, when I'm giving so much uniqueness to each one of them, there is bound to be conflicts for resources, for self-preservation. And then He says, the best ones among you are those who get to know each other. Most of the problems we have between individuals, family members, nations, and communities, because we build myths about the other. We always have the myths about others without ever taking time to know what is it that I believe about you. I should hear from you what you believe rather than me telling that this is what Islam is, this is what Hinduism is. So the interfaith dialogue bridges that. You as a Hindu or Zoroastrian or a Christian, Baha'i, you tell me what your faith is. Then I have to accept that. Instead of somebody telling Hinduism is this, no, I would take it from you rather than someone else. So this interfaith dialogue helps people understand the real faith, which is a beautiful faith. Every faith is beautiful, and every faith is intended to bring peace to an individual and create a cohesive society.
Very well said. You mentioned in your, as we sat here a few minutes ago, you have earned a reputation as expert in pluralism and moderate Islam. Okay, so what does it mean to ordinary folks in the audience? What's the pluralism?
Pluralism is simply meaning respecting the otherness of other. You are who you are, Whether you are African American, white, Mongoloid, me, or tall, short, that's how God has created you. You are your own model. I am my own model. I don't need to be like you. I need to be who I am, be proud of who I am. And pluralism is respecting that and accepting that you are a creation of God and I have no problems with who you are. The conflict comes only in 3 areas. That is space. My space is dear to me. I'm possessive about that space. If you mess with that space, that conflict is genuine. Nurturance, that is the food I take, is critical to me. And sustenance, that is my family and my loved ones. If you mess with these 3, there is conflict. Everything else, nations, religions, should not be a real conflict. They're imaginary conflicts. And then that's what pluralism is, to explore that, is this conflict real? Should we really fight about this issue? Is it worth fighting for? When we put that...
So is it creating the common cause and common bonds?
It is. And again, we have to accept we are very different, each one of us.
Sure.
It is not a mesh. It is standing for who I am.
So the bonds are stronger than the differences. That too often drive people apart.
Very true.
Is that the sort of a pluralism to you that means also? Part of the pluralism. I think there's many, I think. That
part of the
that.
pluralism, indeed. Because who am I to tell you are wrong? You can tell the same thing to me. You can tell my faith is wrong to me. Your faith is wrong to you. My mother, no matter who she is, whether she is a prostitute or a saint or whatever, she's always going to be dear to me.
Sure.
As your mother.
Sure.
And so is religion. It's very passionate,
so
emotional.
So the religion is a precious possession, and that gives you peace, but it also should bring the people together. That's what I hear you say that.
In fact, if you were to ask Mr. Spock to come down on the earth and analyze the religions, remember, he is not conditioned with any belief. He is completely open and rational. He would look at Islam, he would look at Hinduism, he would look at Christianity, Judaism, Baha'i, Buddhism. What he sees is there is some leader who created some ideas for people to absorb. And those ideas, all of them had the same attitude, whether it is Prophet Muhammad or Buddha or Krishna. They wanted people to get along. They wanted people to trust each other and focus on living a God-given life as opposed to fighting with each other. That was the intent of religion. Mm-hmm. And that's why we need to understand and respect each religion as a beautiful system. And it works for every group.
So let's talk about who's your role models and what are the projects you're working on?
My role model, obviously, is Prophet Muhammad.
Of course.
Mahatma Gandhi.
Why Gandhi?
Why Gandhi?
Peace and nonviolence?
Peace and nonviolence, and he set several examples. For example, he knew the society needed some changes in culture and relationships. And what did he do? He didn't tell people to change. He didn't tell the Brahmins or the upper class to adapt and embrace the untouchables at that time. He became one. He wore clothes that intentionally to feel in tune, to feel connected with them. And he set the example that if you want to make a change, you had to be a part of it. You can't do it from outside. And that's why Gandhi is my mentor.
So Prophet Muhammad and Gandhi, who else?
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Buddha. These are all my mentors. And to add to that, Pope Francis.
The new Pope?
The new Pope and President Obama.
Why President Obama?
President Obama is one of the most genuine individuals. I call them as a pluralist. You look at his language, the Republicans or the people can oppose him. He is not opposing or attacking their personalities. He is still focusing on the topic, trying to get them to be a part of it, as opposed to condemning them, ridiculing them. And that inclusiveness is critical. That brings friendship, that makes people think, what is it that we want to do? It is not you, President Obama. It is what you are telling us to build the society. He is a genuine pluralist.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned being a Muslim and Prophet Muhammad and being in Bangalore. What are your thoughts of the status of the Muslims in India in terms of the freedom of their faith, which has been, there are some inflammatory languages that some of the elements in the RSS, the BJP, is trying to divide them rather than, and we must, I think it's important and India has always been a beacon of hope and a democracy and the diversity and the secularism. That's my question. My second question is, what does the wealthy Muslim need to do to help their brothers and sisters in other parts of the world who are hopeless and voiceless, who are left behind?
The first question, after the independence, Prime Minister Nehru, Maulana Azad, Sardar Patel, Ambedkar, and many, many others, but these four key founding fathers shaped the destiny of India. I'm so glad Nehru brought the secularism to India, and they handed over a beautiful country to our Prime Minister Modi. They gave him a two-legged nation. One stood on prosperity, progress, unnati, and the other stood on social cohesion, where all Indians came together as Indians and focused on this one. When Modi took over, beyond his own control, some forces felt that they have the free rein to do whatever they want. They are hurting the social structure. People, instead of focusing on making a living, creating jobs, they're focusing on religion too much and hurting the society. The social fabric of India is cumbering.
It's not only social, the political, economic fabric of the nation.
Economic, I think Modi is pretty good at that. I think he will bring prosperity to India. He's going around the world, bringing new contracts. India will succeed financially, but it will be a Langra India. Means that India would be limping. On one leg it is doing very well, the other part that is necessary to stand firmly on the ground is weak. And I hope Prime Minister Modi, he is one of the greatest prime ministers we have. He has got the largest mandate ever after Rajiv Gandhi. All he has to do is stand up and look at Indians and said, I am the Prime Minister of 1.25 billion Indians.
All Indians.
All
regardless
Indians.
of caste, creed, religion, race, and background and belief.
And I believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, we are all one large family, and I will not tolerate anyone ridiculing, condemning, pushing a fellow Indian. If he does that, Indians would listen to him, and India could be the most prosperous nation on the earth.
Okay, so why the Indians are so intolerant and not inclusive?
Not
all of them are that way, but there are some elements.
Indians are very tolerant, very inclusive people. Our heritage, you could be a Hanuman Bhakt, a Ram Bhakt, or Krishna Bhagat, I have no problems. That's our heritage, that's our ethos. Somewhere along the line, during the Mughal period, there were some kings who did some excesses, and that has hurt the psyche of our fellow Hindus, and that needs to be reconciled. We as Muslims and Hindus have not sat down together and put everything on the table and acknowledge that the problems did exist and move on. We have not done that acknowledgement. Until we do that, there is a resentment, there is a need to revenge, and that is what is causing. Someday I hope to take that step and bring reconciliation and acknowledgement, and that will put India on the top of the world.
Top of the world, change the landscape of the world.
Because we are God's own country, Frank. India, if you look at the universe has got so many elements. Every season, every race, every nationality, every culture, every religion is in India, and we should be very proud of that diversity.
So, do you think the wealthy people, especially the Muslims, should help the people, the poor Muslims who are left behind, especially providing them economic opportunities, and also access, giving them, empowering them with educations? If they succeed, we all succeed.
In fact, I'm glad. Let me give you a different perspective on that.
Sure, please do so.
As a businessman, as an entrepreneur yourselves, and as a businessman myself, I want to see a growing number of consumers in India. How do we increase the consumer base? By educating people. The more people are educated, they're more into the mainstream or middle class fold, and the more of them are there, they are consumers. When they consume, we got to produce things for them, more cars, more manufacturing, more housing. That creates employment, everybody will prosper, and it is in our interest, rich Muslims and all other people to bring everybody up and make the India one of the most successful model nations of economic growth. African countries are suffering. India can be a model because we have everything we need: resources, education, and brains.
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 So the rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, I like that statement. In fact, you are an example.
Oh, thank you.
You are a great example, and all of us have dreams. Every human goes through that theory. I want to achieve for myself, my family. Once we achieve that, there is emptiness in us. We want to fulfill that emptiness, and that comes from helping others. Because as Rakesh was telling earlier, somebody helped me along the way, and I need to pay that back for feeling that emotional, spiritual balance within me. And you have led the way. You are one of the richest guys. Thank God, God has blessed you. And what you have done is shown the way that while you are alive, you are funding organizations to educate, and you can see in your lifetime how that
impact
work,
and influence of
influence, and that is the greatest happiness you can receive. And I urge fellow Muslims and Hindus to uplift other people and receive it. I had friends who passed away. They wanted to do things. Their wealth was squandered away. I wish they had done what they had done. Now that everybody knows Frank Islam,
Oh, I hope I don't know.
and
that
they can
do.
follow you.
Sad story is that sometimes the Islam and the extremism are become synonymous. Some people think so, which is not a true statement. So how do you counter extremism?
Extremism is, traditionally there are two ways of doing it. Most Muslims, the moderate Muslims is a majority like any other. We say, well, they are the fringe elements. They are not like real Muslims. They are wrong. We say that. But
ISIL is a good example.
Yeah.
They have a hatred in their heart.
Indeed.
They do not subscribe to what Islam believes in it.
They don't. They're not Muslim.
So why they do what they do?
Why they do? It's always about greed and power.
Greed and
Human beings, if they get their religion right, Islam, Hinduism, whatever religion, which makes you a better human, if they don't become a better human, then they are not following Islam. Two things I want to quote. God says, the best ones among you are those who care for your neighbors. In fact, Prophet Muhammad was asked once, a guy who is a bad guy, a drunken guy, and there is a guy who is praying 5 times a day. And his associates ask him, who is a better one in the eyes of the God? He says, the guy who is drunk, who is a bad guy, but when the evening comes, he knocks on neighbor's door and asks them, are you hungry? I got a little food I want to share with you. God prefers that individual. And ISIS, they're killing people, which God commands.
And they're killing their own brothers and sisters.
Indeed. In Islam, you are prohibited to take your own life and the life of anyone else. If you did that, you are outside the pale of Islam. But somehow it is not about Islam. It is a bunch of greedy people who want to control others. They are very insecure individuals. They want to control others. We need to capture them. We need to get hold of them. Way back September last year, I wrote an op-ed in Huffington Post. Give them ultimatum. Give them 3 days. If you don't surrender, back off, we're going to drone you. We should do that before they kill other people.
And they continue to do so.
They continue to do so. It is not Islam, but what I was saying was we need to present what Islam, the real Islam is, to fellow Americans and other people. We haven't done that. God willing, I'm going to put a video together.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, you moved to Washington, D.C., and you have a passion, your commitment, a pluralism that you talked about it. And what are the projects that you're working on that if I sit here 5 years from now will have a strong impact and influence society, not just in this country, but all over the world?
The biggest one is right now, because of a few Muslims doing wrong, Muslims have a low, fellow Americans think less of Muslims. 62% of Americans don't think highly of Islam and Muslims. My goal 5 years down the road is to get that reduced to 33% or less. That would be a very measurable survey. Pew will do it when we challenge them. This is what we have done, and do that. Second part is a fellow American they have misunderstandings because they don't know us. Fox News, where I am frequently, they have portrayed an image of Muslims. That's the image most Americans have. We need to change that image, and that does come with working. We need to be a part of the society, not on the outside. Muslims should be in mainstream, every event, everything. The marriages the Muslims are doing, we need people of all faiths. With birthday, graduations. When we are part of the society, then most of these differences will fade and solutions emerge. So this would be number 2. Third would be, right now, thank God for the Jewish community, thank God for the African American community. They have fulfilled the promise of our founding fathers that all men are created equal. They made sure that they were treated equal. When somebody is off, they pay a price for that. You know, Don Imus with the radio and the Lakers, they had to pay a price. And the presidential candidates can say anything they want about Muslims, and there is no consequence to it. And 3 years down the road, I want all Muslims to start speaking, and my fellow Americans, Hindu, Jewish, Christians, to stand up with us and hold them accountable, hold them responsible. So 3 years down the road, whether it is McCain or whether it is Trump, will hesitate saying anything with a loose mouth about Muslims. That's where we want to take to.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Mike, for coming. We appreciate that very much, and I hope you continue to serve our community and our country.
I want to thank you for what you are doing, being an example to the community, and you are one of the inclusive Indians. You have friends in all circles. In your party I came, you have Jewish, Muslims, Hindus,
everybody.
And that is what we need to do ultimately.
Very well said. We are in this together.
We are in this together.
Thank you very much for watching. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week.